Welcome to the Main Course Podcast.
Oh, where we have an extensive menu of all things relationships.
And the best part is,
you as listeners bring life's ingredients as we cook up real conversations.
Well, join us for a bite. And, maybe you might get some tea as well.
Possibly.
Yeah. All right, take it away. What are we talking about today? What's on the menu?
Well, we are talking about money, and specifically, we actually had asked on your page. I say your page because I don't really navigate that for you, but about having a joint versus individual accounts. But maybe if we could just go ahead and define the idea of money.
Yeah. I think this is a pretty hot topic, as I was talking about earlier. This is a topic where it's really interesting to dissect and to discuss because it is a point of, call it
contentious
pain.
Points. Yeah.
Pain in a marriage, very contentious in many ways. But, actually, as we're talking about this, I just want to, I did some quick research here.
Did you?
Yeah. As a consumer research for my professional job,
if you want to call it
as
that.
a consumer research, I did some research just to understand more about what it is that affects a lot of marriage, and more specifically, what is it that leads a marriage to end in a divorce. Okay. Notice how I said that marriage, I didn't say that a marriage failed. I don't think a marriage would necessarily fail, but I think a marriage would end because of some things. So top 5 things I just want to highlight real quick here. In the research that I looked up, anybody can do this. You can Google this. You can do any kind of research. You'll find these are these are the 5 things that are pretty it's quite unanimous across the board. But number 1 is lack of commitment. 2 is infidelity. 3 is constant arguing. 4 is, of course, financial problems. And then 5 is lack of communication. So today we're going to talk about number 4, as you mentioned earlier. We're going to talk about money in marriage. So I think it'd be helpful for us to, like you mentioned, talk about what is money and what does it mean. But let's talk about it from an early age up until this point. As a kid, when you were growing up, what did money mean to you?
I felt like money in itself was not always a, point of a goal. If anything, I felt like we had a lot of fun as kids and we didn't really need much. And even us, honestly, we grew up at McDonough Homes in St. Paul, East Side. Yeah. And our parents never made us feel like we didn't have enough. So I feel like money in itself was always whatever it was defined in the household. And it really wasn't up until I was in high school. And you can now see comparisons of what people have and what you don't have. You see what the world offers. And then you have this sense of maybe desire.
Yep.
And that's the only time when I actually finally decided to get a job, and then you want to earn. And then I was terrible as a steward of money. And it became to the point where I would open up every single possible credit card at every single store. Victoria's Secret, American Eagle. It didn't matter what it was. I was terrible. They'll be like, would you like to open up a credit card? I would be like, yep, sign me up. Get that little 10% off of your $50 purchase, and you thought you scored that day. That was definitely me. And I want to say at one point, I think I probably had 18 different credit cards. And that was my relationship with money. It was terrible. Actually, I didn't really have a good relationship with money. I don't think I actually went into my own bookkeeping until maybe I was 30.
Yeah,
and you know this very well when he met me, man.
I think that's right.
He was just like,
yeah, that's right.
My dad says it this way. My dad said,
Yep, exactly. I think if your parents are watching right now, they'd be shaking their head
he'll be like, your money's in your pocket, and it's bugging you to come out. And so that was actually my relationship with money. I was not good at saving, very good at spending. How about you?
As a kid, I don't think, again, we just like you and your family as well, we didn't have a whole lot of money growing up. Yeah. Our parents are refugees. They immigrated to the U.S. with nothing but the clothes in their backs. And so they didn't have a lot of money, but what they did have was government assistance. And so my parents grew up using a lot of the money that they would receive from the government. So some of you who are listening probably could relate to this. Usually I hear my parents when they talk about going to buy stuff, they would go, yeah, or they might say something like, yeah, and I'm always like, what the heck is fusatan?
I didn't click until you said
Yep, or fusatan. I'm like, what is fusatan? So for the folks who don't know what this is, I think a lot of millennials would understand what this is, but fusatan, okay, it's food stamps.
Oh
so
my
fusatan,
gosh.
fusatan, yeah, fusatan.
Fusatan.
So every time they would get food stamps, they would go and buy food with it. Another way that they also spent the fusatan is, I will leave this part out just because we won't be able to dive in too much about it, but it's an exchange that happens. But that helped.
Like a underground.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, there you go. Yep. Just some exchanges that you would do. But anyways, but that was the only way that, I mean, that was me growing up, hearing about money in exchange. And so to me as a kid, that's kind of how I understood money. Was there was this exchange of something. There was an exchange until, like, I figured out, oh, a quarter means 25 cents or a nickel means 5 cents. And just like you as a kid, I don't think I really needed money. If anything, money didn't even exist in my mind. Not until I was probably in 2nd or 3rd grade when I realized that I can't keep trading pencils for things at school because I always wanted stuff, but my parents couldn't buy it.
Lead pencil.
I want a lead pencil. I want a Trapper Keeper.
Regular number
I wanted
2
a
pencil.
watch. All these great things that my parents couldn't afford, and so
yeah, I do remember.
I had to figure out a way to earn some of these things that I wanted. I figured out that if I was able to make trades in exchange, I was able to get what I wanted.
So you were hustling.
I was hustling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just say it.
I took a lot of pencils, free pencils that I got. So I would trade 10 pencils for a lead pencil, and it worked out very well. So exchanging was a way that I understood how money was. But I think it was in 2nd, 3rd grade that I realized that if I want the good stuff, like the really nice watches, like I just can't keep trading it. It costs money. And I needed money. So I had to find ways to make money, but our parents, they didn't have a lot of money. So what did I do? I stole my dad's money.
You just said your parents don't have money and you stole your dad's money.
I realized that my dad would come home from work, and when he comes home from work, he would hang his pants on the hook on the wall. And one day, I mean, I'm just, a kid playing around. I brush up against his pants, and what do I hear? I hear jingles. I'm like, what is that? I stick my hand in his pocket, and lo and behold, he has a lot of coins in there.
Magic.
So then after that day, every time I would come back to mom and dad's room and I would see his pants hanging on the wall, I would go up there and just touch it. And what do I hear? Coins. So then I became this mouse in the house that kept taking coins out. Every time I go in there and there's coins, I would take it out.
This, actually.
And I keep taking it out. And eventually what happens? Mom finds out that there's a mouse in the house. And so mom basically waited to catch this mouse. And lo and behold, who shows up? The mouse. The mouse shows up to come and take what's not the mouse. And I take the money out of my dad's pocket. And my mom says, she catches me and goes, Miven, go go. And I would just say, Monya so. And then my mom will look at me. She'd be like, my response to my mom was,
in the moment, that's all you can come up with, huh?
So every day or every time dad comes home now, mom knows that the mouse is going to come around.
And then it came from heaven.
Yep. And then I would just tell mom that it came from heaven. God gave it to me. So that was my relationship with money growing up as a kid.
Oh, yeah, that's not how it is anymore. Money right now does not come in
nope.
A package.
I wish I could just go digging
from
around.
heaven. That's for sure. No, it's unfortunate. And, we talk about from adulthood. Honestly, for those of you that are listening, adulthood, it's such a range when it comes to when you're in college versus when you become a person of a professional versus when you become a parent and you have other obligations. What does money look like? It's very different, and it takes many different, facades in your life. And because of that, I find that it's fundamental in a marriage. I find that it's fundamental in a relationship to always speak of it or at least have it be cleared, in the air.
Yeah. Well, growing up, what was it like I mean, let's just talk about college, because I remember in college we had some struggles in college because,
Oh,
of course, we're
yes.
broke college students trying to make money, doing some work study, working
Yep.
1-2 jobs.
Yeah, I
just to
think I
make
was
some
working
money.
like 3 different jobs.
Yeah, tell us what happened with your money. What was your saving habits? What was your money making?
Oh man, I remember. I think let's see. Let's go to like sophomore year of college. I was at University of Minnesota. I probably worked at least 3 different jobs at any given point. If I was in class, I was working. If I wasn't working, I was probably studying and then sleeping somewhere in the library to just catch up to go to my next job. And I felt like that was what it was like. Even if you got, what is it, the financial aid,
Financial aid, work study.
that refund check,
Oh,
it
yeah.
didn't even last. It was like probably only like a few thousand. And for some reason, that money
a lot
just
of money.
never lasted. But I also was a terrible, I don't know, consumer of the fads. Oh, every time there was something new, shiny, or pretty, I felt like I had to have it. And that's the reason why I was always dang broke. Always. It wasn't even the eating out or even like drinking or going to bars, like what people spend their money on. Nope. It was just the excessive spending on things that you just don't need. That was actually my relationship in college. And that became to the point where I was withdrawing all the time. My bank account was negative all the time. And every now and then I'll be like, hey, Gudulu, do you have some money that I could just put in my bank account so that I wouldn't hit negative? And that was how I started to lean on him, actually. And I think that may have raised some questions and eyebrows
Oh, yeah.
for you when
I
I
mean, it
started
wasn't
to ask
just
you.
put some money in my account in case I hit negative. It was, you are negative already.
I was negative.
And you needed me to
Yes,
deposit money so that you would avoid the overdraft
I
fee.
was the overdraft queen. Actually,
Yes.
that's a very appropriate way
I was the
to
opposite.
label me.
I wasn't a
Oh,
big
man.
spender. If anything, I saved a lot. I remember I would work at the YMCA. I was a lifeguard, and when I worked at the YMCA, I purposely chose to open at the YMCA because it was quiet, nobody was around. So I will be there at 4:30 in the morning, open the pool at 5 o'clock, and then the old folks come in. I mean, the old folks, they get there early. They actually are there before me. They're waiting for me to open the pool. I do
It's
my safety
youngin'.
checks. Yep.
Yes.
And then I open the pool and the old folks come in. And then when they come in, I mean, they're so self-sufficient. They swim. They're very careful. They're not like kids jumping, doing flips. So I'm not worried. So I'm in my office. And I just remember I would stay in my office. And while they're swimming, I would put the phone on speaker. And then I would dial my bank. And I would listen to my account balance. Just
I
to make
remember
sure,
doing that.
yep, because there was
Oh
no
my
way of
goodness.
checking apps and whatnot. The only way for me to figure out how much money I
Yeah.
had was to call the bank,
Press
type in
1
my
if
account
you'd like
number,
to hear your bank
and
account
then yes,
balance.
press it. I hear my balance, and
Yes.
then it would just remind me how much money I have, and then I would keep doing calculations. If I continue to work this many hours this week, this is how much I can anticipate in my check, and then I would add out. I would do math,
Wow.
and that to me was how I kept track of how much money I had. And it was really encouraging to know that I had money in the bank. So for
Interesting.
me,
That's very
saving was a big
interesting.
thing. I was always a big saver. I didn't really spend a whole lot.
Well, I like to say that he likes to say he's a saver, but I like to say he's Asian frugal. He still has T-shirts
I
and
save
stuff
a lot. I
from
don't buy things unless I need
high
it.
school in
Yep.
his closet.
Yep.
He's not a big splurger. Actually,
If you know anything about me, I love free
we're quite
stuff.
the opposite.
Yep. So
Yes.
if there's free
He
shirts,
probably has about
T-shirts, I'm
50,
taking it.
maybe 50 or so free T-shirts. You know,
So I'm the saver, obviously, in the relationship.
I'm the spender.
She's the spender.
Extreme,
So
actually, extreme spender.
without even going into details, you probably can tell that was kind of rocky, of course, in the beginning, because as she
Right.
mentioned, she would have overdraft fees, and I would come in and help her. Of course, she's my partner, and so that was before marriage. We were just dating.
Yes.
and we were.
Oh,
I was
man.
already. I was like she said, I was raising eyebrows. I'm like, what am I doing?
Do I want to?
Do I want to get in this? Do I want to deal with this for the rest of my life?
Did I
So,
want to even be in a relationship with myself long term? Yeah, I was asking myself the same questions.
Yeah, and eventually it was one of those moments where I'm like, we need to talk about this because this is starting to get out of hand,
Yes, I
and
do
we
remember
can't
that.
keep this up because if we keep doing this, I'm not going to deposit money anymore. It's almost like not really an ultimatum, but it's just more of a wake up call that you better do something about your finances. But let's keep moving here. Let's go and talk about the nitty gritty of tonight's conversation. I think the reason
What everyone
why,
came here to really hear.
yep, the reason why we're here to talk
What is the
tonight
right way?
is what should you do? Because as we talked about earlier, you had your own account growing up, of course.
Yep.
I had my own account growing up. We didn't have a shared account. And so you had your own money. I had my own money.
Before marriage. Yeah.
Yeah, before marriage. And then when we got married, we slowly transitioned into a joint account. I don't know if you remember what that was like, but to me, I remember that was probably the scariest
I don't remember,
moment.
but I can almost hear it. Can you paint a picture for me?
I think all the overdraft fees that I recovered,
he inherited
rescued
debt.
you from.
Okay, he not just my bad habits, but I think you inherited
Yes.
a lot of my debt.
I did inherit some debt. When we got married, you had credit card debt. I had a little bit as well, but it wasn't a whole lot. But I just remember thinking to myself, dang, is this the right move? Is this going to be good for me? Is this going to be good for us? But I was scared. I was scared because now that means that, we're legally married. If anything were to happen, I am also responsible for your debt as well. So it was a pretty big move. But I think in the end, the reason why I decided that this is probably going to be the best move for the both of us is just going back to our vows, understanding more about our marriage and remembering marriage, that you and I, we're not 1 and 1. We're not 1 + 1 = 2. I mean, we're 1 + 1 = 1. And for this marriage to work, we have to be in unison. We have to be one. So it made sense that we had to come together and be together and share a communal space. Otherwise, if there's your account and my account, that just feels really divisive, where it doesn't feel like we are one anymore.
It was honestly very easy for me to say, go ahead. Yeah, let's merge it. I actually didn't have any hesitation. It made sense to me because we were married. So I think if you had said, let's keep separate accounts, I would have been like, why? What are you hiding? What's going on? Why are we keeping the separation? I think I would have had 100 more questions for you, to be honest. I don't know how I would have felt if you never wanted a joint accounts. Personally, from where I stand, I would have been sweating beads like, oh my gosh, this means that maybe he doesn't love me. Or maybe he's questioning our marriage, my commitment to him. I would have been really scared.
Yeah.
Actually.
Why is a joint account important to you? Or why was it important to you at that time?
Well, at that time, at least in general, my definition of a joint account was a representation of our marriage, of our relationship overall. And I actually read through some of the comments of everyone had suggested and whatnot. And it started to really boil down to what people felt like was practical in nature, and it was no longer about trust or love. And people felt like it was more like a preference versus it was something that you had to do just because you're married. But to me, it's like saying, okay, let's build a house together, but you're going to build the left side of the house, and I'll build the right side of the house, and I'll just tell you how my side's doing, and then you can tell me how your side's doing. And if the house looks like it makes sense, then that's fine. It doesn't even have to be built on the same foundation. That's fine. I felt like that would have been weird. And I think if our marriage was not built on a joint account financially, I would have felt like we didn't have a firm foundation to build even our trust and love. Like this, it seemed not just practical and logical, but it felt like it was a step towards a real sincere relationship versus we're just gonna be married on paper,
Yeah, as I'm listening to you talk about that, I remember that when we first joined account, it wasn't the easiest time to navigate, because we both came together, we got married, and then we decided that we're married, let's put our money together. And I think we brought in even our habits into the account as well. I think the habits were still the same.
Terrible
where
habits.
You're still spending, and then I'm trying to save. And I just remember I'm like,
It got to the
man,
point
did
where
I
you're
really
like,
screw up here?
you're
What
like,
is going on
I'm
here?
going to give you cash and that's all you get to spend because doggone it, you cannot just, not go over the threshold. And I never checked ever what I was spending on and if we even had enough money. I would just go swipe, 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 swipe. And I was, happily swiping, swipe. What do they call it? Swipe friendly, swipe freely. It didn't really matter to me if we had overdraft fees because I was like, well, we'll just pay the fee. That was how I felt about it. And you're like, oh, good God, lady, you're gonna this overdraft fee. This is gonna be the death of me.
Oh yeah, it sure was. I think that was when I eventually said, yeah, no, we're not doing this anymore, and we need to find a way to change this. But even as I'm saying this, I remember at that time, the reason why it didn't change quickly was because it was such a hard conversation to have. I just remember myself, I'm like, I don't want to say too much because this is a shared account and what's mine is what's yours. And so you spending it means that you're spending our money. And so I don't want to say anything too much about it.
It was challenging.
But if I don't say anything about it, we're also going to be, we're
begging for food.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're going at one point, we're going to get to a point where we need to beg for food. And in fact, we did get to that point. As we're talking about money too, I think it's important to also talk about how bad spending habits happen. Right. And it got to a point where we were even on WIC at one point. I think that was probably the most humbling experience ever.
Yep.
To be in WIC and to not have
because we had maxed out
enough money.
Yep. Our credit cards were at the point where it was probably already at collections, and we were trying to go through a debt consolidation. And we only, I think we were already. We had 2 kids. One. We had Bella.
Yep.
We had our oldest daughter, and man, we were in so much debt already. We were living on our own, and it got to the point where I wasn't even making enough. I think he wasn't even able to work. So, yeah, we were trying our best to stay above water. It was really hard.
And by God's grace, you got a pretty decent job that paid well. And so we're slowly able to get out of the rut. I eventually got a job as well where we made decent amount of money to be able to start getting back on our feet.
The JOB, the just over broke.
The just over broke. Yep. Got jobs, just over broke.
Right out of college. We just took whatever they gave us.
Yep.
Basically.
Just enough money. But fast forward from that experience from WIC into making money, it got to the point where we're making decent money. At least at one point we're making decent money. And then I stopped working and you were the sole breadwinner. You're making the money and I wasn't working anymore. But I think that probably was one of those moments where we really had to figure out what do we need to do with our money and how do we view money? So going back to that question earlier, how is money viewed and what does it mean? What do you remember from that experience? Our shared account, you were working, I wasn't working, but we were both spending money from the same account.
And let me just set the let me just set the scene for everybody that it was a mutual understanding that he was going to stop working because he wanted to pursue his doctoral program. And basically his question to me was, are you okay with basically working, supporting us for the next 6 or 7 years? Basically, I'm not going to work anymore. There's just no way I can do this program and work and be successful. And I was like, be a good spouse. You just said, sure, I think it's fine. Little did I know. I didn't know what the implications would be, but you're just like, you want to be supportive. I'm not going to be able to say no. I guess at that time I couldn't find a reason to say no because you don't even know the implications of your decision, right?
Yep.
And so because of that, and when it did start to take place and I was working, there was an immense sense of resentment with you because you're obviously freely spending, doing anything, and usually all things as you please, whether it's fishing in between whenever you had time, buying bait, buying your lures. Fish. Yeah. And he was not working, but he was obviously a student at that time. And I'm not downplaying your time as a student, but I sometimes feel
Okay,
like
the air quotes covered it.
It's for mental health. I'm going to take a break and, for my studies and fish, of course. And so, I'm still providing little do you know, I'm thinking about, obviously bringing in money, try to get promoted.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm thinking about, feeding our kids, think about their future. I was actually under a lot of stress, and in so many ways was it also, a lot of anger. I had a lot of anger towards you.
Oh yeah.
At the same time, because y'all, at one point, 5 years into it, he goes, I think I'm going to take a break from going to school and not finish. I was like, oh, heck no, you're not going to take a break from your schooling. I've been working damn too hard for you to be taking a break. I was going to flip a table, man. I couldn't believe you had said those words to me. It had already been 5 years into his schooling, and I had already been paying into everything.
Yep.
Investing. And he said,
yep. I'm going to take a break.
What do you think? I'm like, what do you think of? What do I think? Hell no, you're not going to. You better get. Yep. I'm going to tell mom. Basically, is why it's such a.
Yep. And I didn't care. I was
like, if you don't go back to school, I'm telling mom.
Mm-hmm.
That was how I felt. I was so angry. When you said those things to me, I felt so disrespected, actually.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, that's how I really felt. I was like, how dare you?
And here's the reason why.
Man.
I eventually decided that, you know what? I think I'm going to take a break and stop school so I can go back to work. Mm-hmm. The reason why eventually I decided that I wanted to do that was because it got to a point where I just couldn't take it anymore. And what I mean by I couldn't take it anymore was every time we would have a conversation with people or have a conversation with our family and friends.
Yes, I do remember this.
You would always say things like using my money.
Ooh, I would say that on purpose just to put a dagger in his
So when
side.
you talked about the resentment, the anger, I mean, that was externalized in these words that you would always say, like, my money. Well, and I would say, like, we can go and, do something, spend money, do whatever. And then you would add in my money, my money. It was always my money, my money. And it got to the point I'm like, you know what? I feel like at this point, I'm not contributing much anymore. And if it's always going to be your money, then I need to do something about this. Yes. I can't just sit back anymore because you're twisting what you said. You say you would support us and you agree to it, but now suddenly you're talking as if like you didn't mean it.
Yeah,
as if you're taking your words back and you're twisting the words around. Now it's almost like you're a hypocrite. You're saying I will support you and you can spend money and we'll be fine, but now all of a sudden, my money. Don't use my money, or you're spending my money. Yes. We buy a house, with my money. Okay, I
get the point. That was a terrible person. Can you stop bantering about? And I didn't sound that mean.
So it got to a point where, yes, I was like, at this point, I think I'm going to go back to work.
I do remember pushing you to that limit.
Yeah,
I do.
And I remember you being super upset about it. I'm like, you're asking for this. Why are you upset?
But was I asking for it? I don't feel like I was asking for it. Honestly, when I was saying those things, I was externalizing a lot of frustration, obviously. But I never would have wanted to actually hurt you, which is ironic. I mean,
exactly.
We just like to inflict wounds, but I wasn't trying to, deter you from your goals and derail you, which is the crazy thing. Yeah. Is we have no thoughts, and I didn't ever think about provoking you to do that, to like put your goals to the side and then go back to work.
Yeah, I don't think you understood the impact of those words. I think, like you mentioned, you held so much resentment and anger because I wasn't working and we were spending. I was spending. I wasn't making anything, but I was still spending. And of course, if I put myself in your shoes, I probably wouldn't have some feelings about that too. But this is only to lead us into the conversation of eventually how do we move from this? I think it got to the point where we need to talk about this, because if it's always your money, and I remember sharing with you, I'm like, every time you say that, it really bothers me, because it makes me feel like I'm not contributing and that what I'm doing right now means nothing. And so I might as well go back to work. And I think after I said those words to you and you got upset, that's what we start talking about. We need to be more careful about what we say. And instead of saying my money, we need to figure out a way to say our money. And I think that's the segue. Now we're going to move into talking about, what did we decide to do? Do we have separate accounts eventually and say, this is your money, this is my money? Or do we move into a space where we said, this is our money? Whether I make all the money and we both spend together, or you make all the money and we spend together, regardless, this is our money. So for us, to answer the question of do we have a joint account or separate accounts, our answer for us in our marriage, at least, is, of course, I want to be mindful that this works differently for everybody, but to us, we feel like this is the best move for us, and it is to have a joint account, to share one account between the both of us, because this is what our marriage is for us. The marriage is we are as one, and we should share one.
Yeah. And I won't say like where I heard this from, but I've heard this before somewhere where, Lumong, and I could be wrong when I say this the way I say it, but what is it?
Yeah,
And
I mean,
felt
that's
like
in the
it
Bible
was-
as well.
I feel like it was like that. And so if my money was separate, then I feel like that's where my heart would be, and I felt that really deeply with the way that we manage our money in general. And because of that, I don't see how we could ever have separate accounts personally.
Yeah, I mean, that's in the book of Matthew 6:21. For your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So we're talking about money. Yeah, if that's where your heart is, and that's where your heart will be, if that's your treasure. But moving on to talking about this joint account, I think for me, at least, I'll speak from my perspective, and you can talk about yours. Having a joint account just makes much more sense, because when we do spend money and when we do use the money, I don't like this my money or your money. I don't like this idea of, well, I pay for it this time, and then next time you pay for it.
In a marriage.
In a marriage, especially.
I feel like that
in
is
a marriage, I just don't
unusual.
like saying that. And if I think back to the time, again, I'm sorry, I have to keep bringing this up, but those words you use of my money, I mean, that to me is just, when I hear it, it just bothers me so much to the point where when you want to flip a table, I want to throw a table. Like, I just can't stand those words. My money. If you were to say, well, I paid for it last time, can you pay for it this time? Like, I don't know how I would function in our marriage if that's the language that we would use.
Right.
I pay for it, so next time you pay for it. It just doesn't sound right. Or let's say Natayotsi, let's just go to let's say Christmas.
Take them out or
Yeah,
something.
we take them out, and you're like, can you pay for dinner tonight for my parents? That would just sound so weird. It just sounds like we're dating again, and that's not really a marriage.
Right.
Like, if I pay for it, it's money from the both of us. Or if you pay for it, it's the money from the both of us. So to me, I just can't. Those words, somehow it just bothers me a lot. So to me, I just can't have that separate account where your money, my money, at least in a marriage.
Right. Specifically in a marriage, because I did hear and I did read through a lot of people's comments, and mainly because I really wanted to hear everyone out and better understand the whys and, why not. And I'll have to say, it has to be joint. And fight me on this. It has to be joint. And the reason, and it can't be a hybrid where it's like, okay, well, let's have a joint and separate accounts, because this becomes now a roommate or like a partnership. Our marriage now becomes more like a business, relationship in a ways where we almost have to be contractual with the way that we operate in our marriage. And yeah, I could see how that could work in a business marriage where it's very convenient to have this person in my life for tax reasons, besides having children with them, but obviously for maybe financial gains, having a dual household income, but not really sharing the money. It starts to become almost like we're just monopolizing on each other. And there probably could be love. There's probably a lot of trust. I'm sure there is some form of honesty still, but I can't imagine having separate accounts, or even separate accounts and a joint account, and having money funnel around here and there. And then one day when we want to buy big purchases together, I have to gift you money, or you have to gift me money, or there becomes like such a all the money itself becomes so nuanced with the way that we spend our money. And it's almost like, yeah, if I really wanted to have a separate, independent relationship from you, which is not a marriage, yeah, we would have separate accounts. And we would just now be, sharing parenting, with our kids.
Yeah.
That's how it would feel like. It would feel like we actually are just are nice to have marriage is what I would call them, like on paper. But you're really actually divorced in, real life.
I think having a separate account just doesn't make sense to me in a marriage because, for one, and I get why, I get why people would have separate accounts because I want my independence. I want to still be able to buy things and do things I want to do. And I still want to be my person. And you can still do that with a joint account as well.
Right.
I think the part that I'm noticing too, at least with separate accounts and maybe joint accounts, that's a struggle for joints or separate account is there isn't much of a communication maybe happening in the relationship where we're not talking about money. Like earlier we talked about how, I shared about how it was a struggle for me to even talk about your spending habits and bring that to the conversation that we need to talk about these overdraft fees because it's starting to kill us.
Right.
And I think it's hard to have these conversations. And I think in all relationships, especially in a marriage, talking about money is such a taboo topic that nobody wants to talk about it. Because when we talk about money, there's a lot of emotions that come out of it, a lot of emotions that are triggered. So
yes,
it's so hard just to talk about money because if I start talking about your spending habits, lo and behold, you're probably gonna unload a ton back on me, and now here we are talking about what you did, what I did, and it's really hard to navigate. And so I think finding a way to talk about how we're spending the money is going to be important. I think we can still do that in a joint account, where if we're spending beyond our means, there's an accountability part to it. If you're spending too much and we're in this together in the relationship, I can't just be sitting passive and not do anything. I have to bring this to the conversation and say, hey, we need to talk about what's happening here because this is not working out. Vice versa. If there's something that I'm doing and I'm gambling with the money, you're not just going to sit and watch me gamble away all of our wealth.
Right.
You're going to say something. Exactly.
Right, about it.
But even that, even in a joint account, I talked about the independence piece. I could still do the things I want to do as well. Like, for example, the fishing part. If I'm going to go fishing, I would communicate to you, hey, I'm going to go fishing and I'm going to go up north. We're going to go rent a cabin. I'm going to split it with the guys, whatever that is. Like, I would still share with you that I'm going to do something and use money. How much of that money? Maybe sometimes I will share with you that this is going to be a bigger purchase. I might be spending $500 or something like that for the deposit.
It's a form of understanding, and there's a connection.
Exactly.
Right?
So if I know that this is going to be a big impact on our bank account, I would say, yeah, this is going to be $500.
I agree. I think there's a huge loss in communication and connection when you don't have a joint account because you just are like, well, I don't really care what he does with his money because if he goes zero, then he goes zero. There's like this nonchalant feeling about your relationship, and you can to a certain point care less about what the other person is spending on. I feel like that is such a terrible way to look at a person that you are wanting to spend the rest of your life with. And I feel like that is it has a sour taste in my mouth to say that, well, it's his loss if he spends all his money. I already have my account, and we have a joint account, and that pays for all our bills. So if he contributes to it and it's 50-50, then it's good enough. It's good enough. That already sounds terrible in a relationship. For you to be like, it's good enough. Well, why can't it be great? Why can't it be in the form of where we have a mutual understanding? We don't have to have the logistical part of our relationship and navigate the way we feel about each other.
Yeah.
I feel like that has a sour taste in my mouth to just even say that, to just say, well, you have your own account. Maybe you should go and figure out how much money you can spend. Whatever you spend, I don't care.
I'm trying to think about that. I'm trying to figure out like what that would be like. Maybe we can play this out a little bit to maybe try to understand this. So let's say we have a joint account and we also have separate accounts. Let's say we both make money. We put our money to the account to pay mortgages and all that. and then you get, let's say 500 spending, if I get 500 spending, and then the rest is in one joint account to pay for bills and whatnot.
Right.
Like what would you do with your money? Like what would you spend your money
Oh,
on?
guarantee you, I spent all of it, and I will still ask you for your, extra money, and be like, "Are you ready? Are you okay to loan it to me?"
Okay. Yeah. See, that's why we're not doing that.
Well, I guarantee you, that's what would happen, and the reason why is because, I already understand, I guess, my limitations with money overall, and I would say that you compliment me very well in that way, and. Yeah, there's a lot of people who maybe were saying, oh, well, that allows each other to be a little bit more responsible on each other's accounts. And then, I would develop better habits and whatnot. But we can't honestly, as human beings, say that each of us is always going to only ever really need $500 in a marriage, especially when we want to support each other. Let's just say, as an example, him taking his license was not cheap, right? And there's only so much money that you can pour into it, maybe from your $500. There's a high chance that you'll be like, can you actually help me out?
I'm gonna need an extra $200
because I'm gonna need some extra money to help me get my license. And that's a kind of unusual conversation to have with one another as a marriage, as a married couple, where we have to help each other level our playing field almost every week. Isn't that, and I feel like, a little unusual to you? It's like going back to dating.
It feels like dating.
It feels like we're reversing back.
And that's going back to what I said earlier. I just don't like that language of, can you loan me $200?
Yeah, because now we have this tracker, right?
Yeah.
Now we have this tracker of things that we owe each other. And that's really weird, isn't it?
I don't like this.
And
tick
if you
for
don't
tat.
pay it back, what do you think is going to happen? Well, we're going to argue. That's for sure. Remember that $200 that you borrowed from me? Do you have that? I'm going to start putting interest on it if you don't pay me back by X amount of days.
No,
I mean, everyone knows a person who you probably loaned money from and they never paid y'all back, and you may or may not still have a taste in your mouth for them either. You know what I mean? So if you're doing that in this type of marriage, in this relationship, I don't really know if I don't know if I can still look at you as a reliable partner, or me as a reliable partner for you, right? Now we're starting to build barriers and challenges for us.
Yeah, I don't like to keep tabs on it. I don't like this tick for tack. You give me this, I'll give you that. And keep tallies of how we spend, or what I loan to you, what you help rescue me.
Or even if you say, don't pay me back, you know what's going to happen? You're still going to have a little bit of the gut.
Even that, I just can't. Just hearing you say that, don't pay me back. Like, I don't want to say that.
You wouldn't want to.
I wouldn't want to say that at all. If we're going to be in a marriage, this is a us thing. This is not a you thing or a me thing.
Right.
I want to talk about us and our money. How are we going to save? How are we going to save money for our kids? How are we going to save money for generational wealth purposes? How are we going to do this? Because if we're in a marriage and we're as one, if you're going to have your account, I have my account, it just doesn't feel like we're connected anymore. Now it's a you and me thing. It goes back to that, your money, my money. I'm going to loan you some money. If I use my $500, I'm out of money. We go and the kids need food. Let's say kid needs stuff for school, and I'm out of money. Like, what do I do now?
Right. And I feel like
you pay for it, or what? Like,
maybe,
how's that going to work?
Maybe it's, we can oversimplify it. Right? Or we can oversimplify it and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to pay for all the kids' sports events and whatever it is. And then, you just pay for the mortgage and the utilities and all that stuff. So there's this oversimplification of responsibilities and duties. And I feel like even that is very roommate-esque. And I don't like that taste in my mouth either, because it starts to become like, well, what if for whatever reason, you get cut at your job and they put you in a lower position, they move you around, and now you actually don't make as much as you used to. Oh, now I got to pick up some, right? Now I got to pick up more of what we initially agreed on. And then this becomes like this snowball that just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And I find that that's really challenging to place yourself in a marriage. Like, why would you set yourself up like that to in my opinion, fail?
Yeah. Some people even talked about trust. I think this was a big piece too. I read some of the comments and I talked to a lot of people about this too. So I hear that trust seems to be a big part that goes into this idea of having joint accounts or separate accounts, that if you have separate accounts, it's because you don't trust each other. Or maybe that if you have a joint account, it's because you also don't trust each other too, having separate accounts. So the trust goes both ways. Let's stay on this topic for a little bit, just about trust. Like how does trust move into this conversation of having a joint account? Like, what does trust look like? Is it because of trust that people have separate accounts? I mean, let's just talk about from our perspective too. Like, what is it about the trust piece that you think led us to having a joint account?
Well, let's step back a little bit in regards to, is it about trust or not? For the all purposes of money. I honestly don't think that it's always about trust. I think it's really a agreement of convenience.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I don't really think it's always about trust per se, because people can obviously trust one another, but it has been maybe convenient to have separate accounts. There is that. And so your marriage now becomes surrounded around the idea of convenience. And the trust is still there. Of course, for the purposes of, they're never going to commit infidelity or things like that, of that nature. But I don't think it's always about trust. But for us specifically, I think it was probably an underlining part of our marriage.
Say more.
And I would say that from the standpoint that, if we did not have a joint account, then we wouldn't have a underlining, our relationship wouldn't be pegged on trust overall, because it was so natural for us to have a joint account. So we would naturally trust each other. Does that make sense? So we innately already felt like this, it's so natural for us to already have this combined account so that we can naturally trust one another. I don't feel like we would have, if we had had separate accounts, would we still have had that trust in one another? I think it would have started to question our principles, our shared values, even though it would have been convenient logistically, even though it would have allowed us to build great repertoire financially, all of that acumen that you could have, for you to be a good steward of money separately in your marriage, yada, yada, yada. That wouldn't have meant anything more. If you had wanted that independence, you would have not gotten married. If you felt like you still need to have that independence in order to manage your money better, I don't feel like marriage would be the right idea for that kind of person. I don't feel like we should have gotten married if that was the case.
Yeah.
Automatically, in my mind, we got married. I was like, okay, we're going to have shared accounts. We're going to have shared addresses. Our phone bills, whatever, we'll merge our phones, our phone lines. Like, all of that just rolled up for me naturally. Not even just the bank accounts. That's why it was a no-brainer. It was everything. I didn't keep my own phone bill or provider or carrier. I'm pretty sure we went out of our way and actually got one carrier, at one point.
At an early time, yeah.
Right. So I just feel like it's natural. It's natural of a marriage to do so.
I think so too. I think natural is a good word. I think another part that builds maybe trust, as we're talking about here too, is another word that comes to mind is transparency. Being transparent about how we're spending. So like earlier I talked about, if I'm going to go fishing, for example, I will let you know. I'm going to let you know that I'm going to go and spend $500 for, I don't know, a deposit for an ice house if I'm going to go ice fishing or whatever that was, that I would be transparent about what I'm spending with you. And I think that's also important too, to have these conversations. Maybe that's, not maybe, but we talked about earlier that communication is a big piece too, that if we're not communicating how we're spending or what we're spending, especially with these large purchases that we're holding out. And that's probably what financial infidelity is. here we go with the word infidelity. And we talked about that last time about emotional infidelity. I think there's also financial infidelity too, where you're hiding something from the other person and there's not much of a trust. Hey, I'll tell you what I've done before. I'm sure a lot of people have done this before.
I'm scared.
Yeah. So
wait, do I know this or do I not? I'm scared.
I mean, once I start saying that, I'm sure you've probably done this yourself too, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
But financial infidelity, it's when you don't want to tell the other person something. I mean, that's what infidelity really is you broke a contract or you hide it. You don't really want to tell, right? So I want to spend money on, let's say, Pokemon. Okay, let me just use a good example.
Oh, I think I know where this is going.
So I want to buy Pokemon cards.
Yes.
And I know that you're going to disapprove of it. You're not going to allow it.
Oh, I know where this is
So
going.
instead of asking you, I find a way to loop around it. Where instead of using maybe a debit card, I use my credit card instead.
Yes, I do.
Because yes, I do have a credit card under my name and you don't have access to it. So if I wanted to do something like that, I would. And I have in the past. I have used that in the past because you would never find out.
Yeah,
you would never know.
$600 worth.
You would never know.
Pokemon.
You would never know
during the pandemic just to open it.
Yes, you would never know.
Well, I
and
remember.
Then eventually, I got to pay for the bills, right? It's gonna come back anyways. In the end, I have to pay for my bills, and I need $1,000 to pay for my credit card bill. Where's it gonna come from? Of course, our account.
Gee.
And so now you're like, wait, what? You're paying $1,000 for your credit card? Like what was that?
Well, what'd you spend on?
And then now I had to, shamefully confess that.
And then you know what he said? To be off topic, he goes, "But I pulled a what is it?
Hey, Charizard. You know what I'm saying? Gotta be a Charizard.
I made up for it. I promise."
Exactly.
I was like,
exactly.
But did you? It's okay. I did the same thing about with plants. But anyways,
I'm sure.
I digress.
That's what I'm saying. Like we've done this before, and it's not that we're perfect when it comes to a joint account. These things, we're always going to be tempted. We're always going to be like, I know my partner's going to disapprove of it. They're not going to like it. And probably this is the reason why people do have the separate accounts, right? This is the reason why they do have separate accounts where I can use the money without having to justify it. And it makes sense. I totally understand that. But the part that bothers me is I just don't like this my money, your money thing. I just, that's the part that I'm like, if you're in a marriage, I don't like using that language at all. That language
separation.
Itself just creates, it just creates a distance. It's not us anymore. It's a you and me, my account, your account. And to me, that just doesn't sit right with me. And that's why I'm always a strong proponent of having that joint account, because if we're going to be married,
it's the principle.
it is us. Yeah, it's us. And we need to make sure we understand this is us. And if I'm going to spend $600 on Pokemon cards, I would owe it to myself and us that I would share that with you, that, hey, I might, I'm going to spend $600.
Spit it out.
You know,
yes.
right? I'll come to you and be like, I'm
Right.
going to spend $600 on Pokemon cards because I really want to chase this. And I think it would behoove us if you, as my spouse, would do a reality check with me as well. That is it really necessary? Not that you're questioning me so that I wouldn't buy it,
Yes,
but
he does that too. Do you really need another plant?
yeah, you
Yes.
would ask me.
He would tease me.
Because if you're
I would
not
tease
there
you.
to help me in this
Right.
marriage, I might just go and spend it.
Right.
But then if you ask me, well, do you really need it?
There's things we could have spent money on.
Exactly.
Yes.
We have the kids' sports
Right.
coming up. We have these things coming up that I, dodo brain, I am just thinking about Pokemon cards. I'm not
Right.
thinking about that. And I think in that
Human
sense,
nature.
we're complimenting each other. We're keeping each other accountable.
I agree.
We're doing this together, that we can keep each other in the same contract, that this is what we're doing here. This is what our covenant is, that we talk about these things. If I miss it, you're going to see my blind spots. If you have blind spots you're not seeing,
And
I'm gonna step
everybody
in
has
and
a
see it
blind
too.
spot.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love that there was opportunities for people to explain themselves in the comments, and that was that, oh, well, there is transparency. He has access to my account. I have access to his account. And, they can see whatever I spend anytime they want. And I can see whatever they spend anytime they want. But, this works for us. And I'm like, yeah, because it's convenient. It's a convenient way to shelter yourself, in my opinion, from all the other unsaid things. Like, even though there is transparency, yeah, there are also some unsaid conveniences to it, which is I don't have to consult him. I don't have to have this commitment to really go out of my way to build a real marriage, which is transparent communication, like what you're saying. Even though there is this transparency of logging in and you can see everything I'm going to spend money on, I don't have to really consult you because it's my money. If I'm spending $600 on my beautiful El Choco red here behind me. Yes, I actually bought that for $250. But anyways, that's what I'm saying is I wouldn't have to consult you about buying a $250 plant.
That is like
in LA.
Dying.
I drove like 3 hours just to go get this. I have to say it was a great deal at the time, but there's those unsaid. There are those unsaid territories that you don't want to relinquish, that you don't want to give up, because now you feel like you're in this convenient relationship because the marriage becomes convenient when you want it to be. Not for financial reasons, maybe for other reasons, whether it's sexuality, whether it is just the convenience of having, arm candy, whatever you want to call it. You're not feeling alone at whatever venue or, but your boss says bring your wife. You could just say you bring your wife. But as a matter of fact, y'all ain't
That's
really
an interesting
married.
way to spend money.
I'm just saying y'all are really not married if that's the case, because you have this relationship that is just very convenient when you want it to be. But you don't even share accounts, And I find that to be peculiar in so many ways.
Yeah. Well, now that we've been having a joint account for many years,
For over 20 years. Yeah.
what do you think has changed for you?
I would say that what has changed for us is...
Wait. What has changed for you?
Sorry. What has changed for me? What has changed for me is actually checking my spending. I actually check my limits. And I really do ask myself if I really need things or not. And I actually plan my budgeting a lot more closely in order to avoid having conversations with you if I made terrible decisions. But usually I think about it with, spending about it with repercussions. I think about the advantages and disadvantages now compared to what I used to. Before I didn't even look at my account. I think I barely opened it. Little did I ever even call the bank account to get my negative balance.
Oh, you wait until the card got declined.
I would wait until the car was declined, and then I'm like, oh well, okay, you can just put it on, hold, and I would just never go back and get it. That was me.
Well, I heard you say something, and I think that's important to highlight too, and that is this idea that you're more consciously aware of your spending. And I think that's the part where this accountability piece does come in, because if you're blowing $500 and I see it, I'm like, what the heck are you doing with this money? Why did you spend $500 on plants? I mean, it's a conversation to be had in the marriage, where if we're spending ridiculous amount of money on things that is not really helping the marriage, let alone if we're parents and we have kids, why are we blowing this money on things that is not helping our family? I get the idea that you want to buy a plant, and I don't want to take away your independence and your sense of self. I still want you to be you. But there's a reality check where is this realistic for you to spend this kind of money, considering all the responsibility that we have right now with what we have and also our children? Can we make this purchase? Is it going to be good for us? Is it going to be helpful? Are there other means that you could spend money that could still allow you to be yourself and still save money? Yes, of course. The answer is always yes.
Right. Quickly, before I lose my train of thought.
You tend to lose things quick.
I lose things like that. Okay, y'all. So I got to say this before I forget, is that what changed now is what you're asking for me, is that I actually use money with the perspective of how it reflects on you, not just me, but on you. So if the kids ask me for something, I would always say, let me check with dad. I'd never said that before. I'd be like, I don't know, sure. And I would just get it. But now I allow the kids to help and help them understand where the authority is. It's not just with me, but it's with dad. And it's up to dad and I, or that dad may have to have the final say, because there's some things that maybe I may not be privy to or whatnot. So I would echo these principles that we already have in our marriage that is shared with our kids, so that they also understand that it's fundamental and there is a foundation to money, and that is us, that we are in it together. So that is what has changed for me.
Yeah. And that also, I mean, just hearing you talk about that, I think it's important because it's the same with me. If the kids ask me,
Oh, really?
yeah, of course.
I'm so pleasantly surprised.
Well, if the kids ask me,
I thought it
hey,
was just me.
can we go to Hawaii, right?
Oh.
I'm not just going to willy-nilly say, oh, yeah, sure, let's go to Hawaii. No, I'm going to say, well, let me and Mom talk about that. So
I'm
we can
so
we can
humbled.
plan that, right?
Thank you.
So I wouldn't just do that, but that's not to say that everything has to be like that. Like if I'm taking the kids to sports and then we come home and they're hungry, they're like, hey, Dad, can we get some McDonald's? I'd be like, oh, let me call Mom first. No, I mean, that's ridiculous. That's not
No,
realistic
right.
anymore.
In general.
So when I talk about
Right.
reality check and being realistic, I mean, there's still going to be things that we're going to make purchases on, which I don't need to consult you. You don't need to consult me. I'm going to see in the bank account anyways when you make those purchases. And that's okay. But that, again, if we're having a shared joint account, I'm going to see the money anyways when it's in and out. I don't need to ask you. I can make assumptions, or if I need to ask you because it's a significant amount, I would say why $200 at Target? Like, what did you buy?
Right.
Or $500 at Target, Walmart, whatever. Like, what did you purchase? What was the purchase about? I would ask you about that, and then you would tell me. And if it makes sense, then it is what it is. But at the same time, to your point of thinking this through more consciously, is I'm not just thinking about buying things for me anymore, because if we're in a marriage, it's us. Is it going to be helpful for the both of us? If we are in a marriage and we have kids, is this, I mean, it's more systemic now. Is this going to be good for you, me, and the kids in our family? And if the answer is no, then what's the point of the purchase? Is this really a good purchase or not? If it's something, again, go back to the independence part, where it's a hobby of mine and I want to indulge in a little bit, sure I can. Of course, I will let you know too if it's a big purchase. And if it really doesn't serve me well, or if it doesn't really serve a purpose other than I just feel like doing it, honestly, to me, once we get into this next level of life where we got married and we have kids, it's almost like I don't need to put myself first. I do, but my priority is not so much me anymore. It's more of you and the kids.
Right.
Let me just be careful about what I say there, because I'm a strong proponent of self-care. But when it becomes selfish care, that's when I have a problem with it.
Oh, I remember those days.
I'm okay
I had a lot
with
of selfish care days.
Yes, I'm okay with self-care where maybe one day you're like, you know what, I need to go eat a buffet, which I do. I go eat by myself at a buffet, and I do things to take care of myself, and you should as well. You should spend money to take care of yourself. But when it becomes selfish care and it starts to have detrimental effects on your family, that's the part where I'm like, we need to talk here. We need to figure out what's happening here, because your self-care now is turned to selfish care. Let's have a conversation about the money that's being spent here, because it's not helping us.
Right.
Anything else you want to add to that?
No, I just wanted to highlight those specifically. I mean, we're not that, I guess, I think we're old, but we're getting there. And I wanted to also talk about the estate planning, the way that it works with, people passing, things like that. It's on my mind. It still weighs heavy on my shoulders to know what that would be like if you had had a separate account. I think about this. I actually did think about that, because people were talking about it. I'm like, man, what happens if their spouse croaks? What happens if I croak? Yes, there's all these beneficiaries. That's all set up and everything. But there's also maybe a lot of things that maybe were loose that you have to also pay into, because they were paying their own bills. There's all these other estate planning, and I'll guarantee you not everyone has those squared away. And it just doubles your need to plan. It doubles your marriage convenience. It doubles the work for you to also plan 2 different types of estate planning. I think about it like this, we've been watching No Good Deed, and they talked about Jay-Z money and Beyonce money. And I don't have Beyonce money, and you don't have Jay-Z money.
I wish.
And so
Actually, I wouldn't want that.
I feel like we shouldn't be treating our marriage in such a way, and where we have these two umpires, and we have to now also plan for it should there be no us, right? And so in our marriage, when we plan estate planning, or we plan, how would we go about this together? And I feel like if I had to do that on my own, it would feel pretty lonely to have to plan that on my own, because I have all of these other separate conveniences.
Well, I'm not a attorney. I don't know much about estate planning, but I would imagine that if you and I have separate accounts as well, if you were to croak, using your words,
Sorry.
if you were to croak, I wouldn't have access to it. I wouldn't be able to access your account because that's your account. And even if the kids need the money, I don't know how that would work. I mean, I don't want to dive into this because I don't know the logistics around this.
Or
but I wouldn't,
just being able to have access to it in general is just not.
I would think that if you had your own account and I had my own account and something happened to you, God forbid, I wouldn't be able to access your account because that's yours. Unless, of course, maybe you set up some will and whatnot where that money does move on. But what if you don't?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like it's a ripple effect to have these separate accounts. It becomes and it spills into all avenues and veins of your life. Everything down to, how much will you contribute to the kids' college fund? And it'll be kid 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, how much are you going to contribute, and how much am I going to contribute? And then as we grow, let's just say in our profession versus maybe lose our jobs, as we both grow, are we going to go back and reassess and be like, I think you should be contributing a little bit more because now you're making more. I think I should be contributing a little bit more because I'm making more. So there's this like continuous need to reassess and assess again, reassess this convenience yet again. And I feel like that is so nauseating to do in a marriage. Because we have to keep reassessing our benefits to each other. Doesn't that sound terrible?
No, I wouldn't want that.
Like, let me assess if you're still good enough to be in the convenience of this marriage. And what if you're not?
No.
What then? Think about that. What if at that point we reassess, and let's just say you lose your job and you can't contribute anything anymore? It's no longer a convenient relationship, a convenient marriage.
Well, that's the part where, go back to the us earlier, where if I'm not contributing anything and you're the sole breadwinner in the relationship,
there is the resentment.
What's going to happen here? To your point,
human nature.
You might start saying, well, I'm the one making money. You're not doing anything. So resentment might build, anger might build, whatever that is.
Right.
To the point where now all of a sudden you're like, I don't want to be in this anymore. But if we're in this together, even if let's just say we're 1960s traditional, 1950s, I don't know, back in the days,
right,
where I'm the one going out and working, you're the homemaker, you don't make any money at all. I'm the only person going out, bringing in income. When I bring that money back home, I'm not going to say I'm the one making this money. I'm going to spend it. I would hope that's not the case, but I would hope that if you're the only person going out to make money and bring it in, that this is our family's money. We're going to spend this for us and our children and our family.
Right.
Even though you're not the one working, I'm the one working, bringing the income. It's still our money. We're going to use it as if it's our money. If you want to use it for, I don't know, get them nails did or whatever that is, that you can do what you need to do. But the fact is that it's our money. Even though I'm the only one working, it's not my money that I'm bringing only. When it comes to our house, once I bring this money home, it's our money. And then we should use it like that.
So how much time do we have? I actually wanted to open up a can of worms, but I don't think we can. I think it'd be
depends on how many worms are in there.
I think it's a very giant worm, and it was about how he hid his ability to monetize Facebook from me because it was a sour part of our marriage. Do you want to talk about that?
Say more about that. I do want to know what you mean by that.
What I mean by that is because of the way that our marriage constricted the way that we were communicating, even with a joint account, I never saw what he was monetizing. And it was also because we were going through our own years of trying to rebuild our marriage at that time.
Yep.
And I can't say that any marriage is perfect, but I can say a lot of marriages are going to face some challenges. And so, man, if you were to throw in separate accounts while we were having our marriage problems, oh, it would have been so easy just to walk away.
Yeah.
It would have made it even more convenient for us to separate because we already had separate accounts. Because we already have that separate mindset. Like the independent mindset would have already been there because we already built that as our foundation. That was our principle already at that time. Let's just say we already had that and we had marital problems. Well, I bet you the first thing any one of you listening is going to be thinking is, well, now I can take my money and run because now he can't gut me. Now I can't gut him.
Yep.
That's the first thing you think about, is that you're actually setting yourself up in case this person is going to out you. Don't be in the marriage at all. Don't get married.
I'm protecting myself.
Don't get married. And I'll have to say that during our time when it was rocky, even though we had joint accounts, I never knew what he monetized or what he was able to gain or what kind of relationships he had with regards to being able to, even be paid as a speaker or whatnot. I don't know any of that information, or I didn't have any knowledge to that. But I'm sure if we had separate accounts for that, for you, it would have been really convenient for you just to walk away.
Oh yeah, of course.
And I think that's the main thing that just blows my mind, is for any relationship to have separate accounts and your marriage is rocky, outside of just talking about money, and your marriage is rocky in general, just because, life is happening. There isn't time to maybe date each other or being able to be present in each other's lives, and you have separate accounts. Well, you might as well just continue to, pour salt in that wound because it's not going to get any better. If that's the case, I can't even imagine what it was like for us if we were to have separate accounts at that time, where we were already throwing around the divorce word.
Yeah, it wouldn't work out well. And you're right. I think it would be an easy exit it would have been an easy exit for both of us.
At that time, the house was under my name, actually.
Yeah. If we had our own things, you had your own things, it would be easy to walk out. And perhaps maybe that is why some people do have separate accounts. I can't speak into that. People would have to speak into that. But I would imagine if we had separate accounts and our marriage is rocky and we're not working out.
When we were so infumed.
Yeah. If I think back to those days, I would walk away and I'd be like, yeah, I don't care.
Bye. Yeah.
Bye, Felicia. I'm out. I'm taking my money with me and I'm gone.
I do remember that.
But that part is just speaks again to this idea of commitment. If I'm committing to a marriage, I'm committing to you, I don't have an exit. I'm not looking at the exit door. I'm looking at what's going on here. Let's talk about what's happening here. Let's work through this and figure out how to overcome this. If I have an exit door or if I have a safety net over here, then yeah, I might be tempted that I want to leave. Actually, going back to the Dick and Dose account, yes, I was monetizing. And I didn't share much with you because at that time I was like, if you listen to the first couple of episodes so far,
we didn't trust each other.
We had a really rocky marriage where I didn't really trust you. And so, and of course, earlier I'm talking about, you're like, my money. Now, you know what? Now I'm making some money.
Now he's thinking about.
Now I'm thinking, hey, this is my money now.
Yeah, Dick and Dose is mine, blah, blah, blah. Even though I came up with the name, I'm like, well.
Yeah, I could care less about that.
Yeah, he's like, he doesn't share anything with me.
I could care less because at that time, when you're so mad at each other like that, all you're thinking about is, how can I hurt the other person?
And of protect course, what is mine.
Yes, and of course, if you have the opportunity to be tempted by, this is just my money now, I have this, and I walk away and I lose nothing, then yeah, I'm gonna walk away too. I don't care about this. There isn't this drive, this motivation to want to work it out anymore. And we've suddenly forgot about our vows. So at that time, yeah, I wasn't thinking about it. I'm like, screw it. I mean, my money now. Now I get to turn around and say, hey, my money is my money. Why you want to touch my money? It's my money. And it's almost like there's this bantering that is so unnecessary in the marriage.
I agree.
Now suddenly we forget about our vows, from death do us part and all these things
that we say to each other at the altar.
What is yours is mine.
Exactly. And this idea of coming together, we're celebrating a union of two people. We don't have that anymore. Now we're fighting our ways out, and we're not focused on how do we overcome this so that in the end, we still choose each other. We still choose to be together to overcome these challenges. So yes, I agree that that part was rocky, but in the end, what helps is let's figure out how to overcome this, because in the end, it's not about my money, your money. It's our money. We need to put that in the middle of all this.
Right. So, I mean, to summarize really everything all in a nutshell is, in my opinion, joint accounts allows for exits. Oh, sorry, the other way.
Separate accounts. Yes.
Separate accounts allows for exit. It is actually the exit. It's the convenience of exits. It's the convenience of independence, and the joint accounts in itself. It is a challenge, but the whole point of a marriage is to be a part of, and us, and you have to accept the challenges that come along with it, not just the conveniences.
Yeah, and to attack onto that too, just keep it in mind. Earlier we talked about the systemic piece where this account does have systemic impact. It's not my money, your money, but it's our money, and it impacts us. And if we have children, it affects our family. It affects all those around us. It's not just one person or the other. And so when we put in that perspective, we're working together for the well-being of everyone else too.
I agree.
I know that sounds like a big burden for a lot of people. They're like, I don't want none of that. But if we're gonna come together
For life,
we got to keep in mind that it's not just you and me. It's my family, your family. There's all these things happening, and we have to be together and on the same page in order for that to work. And if we're on separate pages, then I'm going to say, spend your money for your family. I'm spending money on my family. We're not together as one anymore. We need to be on the same page, and then we can take care of the rest, because that's what we sign up for, and we can't forget about that.
So you don't have a separate account, right?
I got a few overseas, but that's for me to work.
I just
through.
wanted to ask, just because I was trying to be facetious, but yes.
Nope. Nope. We'll keep it all together. We'll figure it out. If anything happens, we talk through it. But we'll wrap it up there. I hope that, of course, we acknowledge that everyone does this differently. It works out for you in some ways, but from our perspective, we strongly believe that if you are married and you've committed yourself to one another, same thing, everything, like you mentioned, what's yours is mine. It's no longer your money, my money thing. It's an our money thing. And we need to be in the same page if we're going to make this work.
Right. And where your money is where your heart is.
Yeah. Matthew 6:21, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And money is just one of those things where if you have it, you're always going to want more. I mean, that's another can of worms we're not going to dive into. But
I mean, you talked about this earlier when I was having an allergy reaction to saving. And you were talking about cattle, don't you? You know, dombo, and here's so many cows that we could bring to our marriage and whatnot. Imagine if I'm like, I have my cattle.
Them are my cows.
You have your
them
own cattle.
Your pigs.
And you can feed your own cows, and I will feed my own cows. And then, if we ever need to sacrifice one or the other, I'll sacrifice mine this time, and you can sacrifice yours next time. You do hear how ludicrous?
How can we kill your cow this time?
How ludicrous that sounds.
No.
Man, it wouldn't even matter if it wasn't money.
No,
honestly,
if you put it in that perspective, that sounds kind of ridiculous.
It is. I mean, just think about it, people. When you talk about it in that stance, it's not just money. Yeah, it's about possessions in general that have a value to carry your relationship to its actual, like you said, exchange level. Whether it is stocks, whether it is your retirement accounts, whether
interesting right now.
So even when anyone should pass away, your beneficiaries are able to take that. In your annuities or whatnot, you can leave that for other people and whatnot, and you're contributing that from your own employment, but you're not going to take that with you forever. You're taking that to share it with your legacy, your kids. Imagine, like I said, if I had my own cattle and you had your own cattle and we married each other, and then I'm like, but I'm not going to share my livestock with you.
Just one chicken, please.
No, I would be like, no, go get your own cock.
Dang. That's sad.
Okay, that's enough
All right. We digress.
mom jokes. Okay.
All right. We'll wrap it up there. Hopefully that makes sense. I know we were kind of jumping all over the place a little bit there, but at the end of the day, the take home message from the both of us is if you're going to be married and you have a covenant that you've committed to, joint account is the way to go. It's no longer your money, my money, but our money. And we do this together. Even if we have to talk through some of these challenging conversations and taboo topics with regards to finances,
Right.
that's the whole point of a marriage is to work through some of these challenges and to overcome it and to build trust with one another.
I agree.
And to continue to grow together as a marriage, as a person, and as a family. So